Paul, how are you?
Hey, Kenzie, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you
Excited.
too.
Yeah, totally. Excited to get this going, man. Let's powwow.
Let's do it.
Um, cool. Awesome. I'm super excited for, the new fund that you're working on, Fund 5. Congrats on getting that going.
Thank you.
So yeah, you're OG in the space for 11 years. Been with Pantera since 2014, so it's been, quite some time. My first question for you is, what are some most important lessons that you learned about deploying capital across these different market phases, different market cycles?
Yeah, uh, it's a good question, and yeah, we've been doing this since 2013 when Dan made the 30,000 Bitcoin trade at $60, and then I got into this space in early 2014, really because I felt like uh, Bitcoin was going to be a store of value, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies would help sort of facilitate cross-border payments and sort of enable banking for the unbanked. Me being Thai and from Thailand, Southeast Asia, felt like there was just a need for certain geographies to really sort of onboard onto crypto and get exposure to DeFi. And so, we started launching our venture funds in 2013 and 2014. And really, like, it just all comes down to the team, really is. I mean, that's the reason why we bet on Sentient really early on. It's really just, you, Sandeep, I mean, guys that we know that can operate, guys that we know that can execute, guys that we know that can do the business development, raising capital, navigate through market cycles, be around until the next cycle. I mean, I think it all just comes down to the team. Similar to actually one of the companies that just went public, Circle, right? I mean, talk about a cat with nine lives. I mean, I actually bought my first Bitcoin on Circle, and the deal happened Series B right before I joined, like the month right before I joined, and I was like, man, this is an entrepreneur who's taken two companies public. That doesn't happen in a space that is still sort of nascent, and then he was part of the early internet, and so for him to decide that this is the time to get into crypto, and starting off with a brokerage in which I actually bought my first Bitcoin, to actually leaving the space and doing fintech, coming back on sort of the exchange side of things, then sort of launching Center, sort of a more of a decentralized stablecoin play, and then saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go all in on stablecoins, USDC specifically, and build a whole business around that when there wasn't even quite sure what the business model would be." And then, of course, rates going up, you know, becoming more of a sort of a treasury play, and now becoming like a platform for all of global payments. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like getting in really early, backing these entrepreneurs and letting them figure out in a long period of time, what is going to be the eventual big vision, and be able to sort of take it to a large outcome. Obviously, this IPO is monumental, but it's still really early in terms of what they're doing. So I think there's a lot more growth to sort of have. And kind of coming back lastly to what you mentioned around our fundraise of $1 billion. And it is our fifth venture fund. And so the last two vintages, Fund 5 and Fund 4, we've structured it where it's it's not just investing into equity. It's not investing into Bitcoin and just liquids. It's not investing into things that are spin out tokens. It's all of the above. I mean, we're seeing this space, now, with public markets, seeing a lot of institutional demand, and this space is still early. They want to go with a trusted partner that can just figure out what strategies make sense over a longer period of time. And so as we think about this fund, we want to be able to shift across different strategies, knowing that, man, when the market's super hot like this, maybe you just want to do seed series A's and you wait for the growth stage funds to come in and mark up all your deals. So that's our North Star, is really just like performance and returns. And so if we have the flexibility to go across different strategies depending on the cycle, that's the best way to invest. And so that's kind of our thinking around this next fund.
That's incredible, man. I did not know Circle was that early, by the way. You bought your first Bitcoin there.
Yeah.
Pretty, pretty incredible.
It's pretty insane. Yeah, we've done 22 unicorns. Circle's one of them, and I've led 17 of those unicorns. So it's been a fun journey to be able to like find those entrepreneurs that are passionate to sort of, you know, be long term and sort of take these companies to large successes.
That's incredible. You know, we noticed that lately there is these new liquidity now, and everybody's talking about it in the market, and that's in the public sector of these equity, crypto related equities, right? So for your new fund, how do you envision getting into those type of pre-IPO crypto companies?
Yeah, I'll just set the backdrop that like this did it, and for you and me, this administration is really just bringing a lot of tailwinds for greater participation from the institutional side of things. Just on a super high level, the fact that crypto companies like yourselves can now have banking, the fact that, there's potentially sort of a greater, crypto strategic reserve, to regulations within the US, both on the CFTC side and the SEC side, that hopefully will bring a greater foundation for regulations all across the world. But the fact that we've had a Genius Act that is providing clarity and comfort around stable coins, who gets to be an issuer, what those stable coins can sort of be in, and sorts of yield and things like that, to, of course, a market structure bill, hopefully, that will provide a lot more clarity on what's a security and what's not, and potentially provide fundamentals and business models around altcoins, where they're not just governance tokens, but you can really sort of have institutional investors come in and do a DCF and really sort of analyze these things and compare these things from less of a speculative nature. And so this is going to unlock a lot more sort of like normal retail activity, but also institutional activity into altcoins. But in the meantime, until we're waiting for regulations and some of those killer use cases and sort of altcoins to just be able to have more clarity and sort of be fundamentally sort of in the hands of retail and institutions, the capital markets around public companies are starting to open up. I mean, one of our investments, Amber, the fact that they saw an opportunity to be like the first APAC company, crypto APAC company, to say, hey, dude, like the US is where we need to be. And we've heard this from a lot of our portfolio companies wanting to hire a head of US on the policy, developer relations, and other sort of things. The US is now shifting to be the crypto capital of the world. And so we want to access the public markets. They were able to get listed on NASDAQ with their wealth management product. And, we think that that's really going to open the markets for them to do a lot of interesting things and be able to build more of a brand and business over here in the US. And then, of course, with Circle, that's also providing just a lot more education and a lot more exposure for institutional investors. But along the way, MicroStrategy, what they've been able to do around educating folks around Bitcoin and providing access to Bitcoin for investors pre-ETF, and even with the ETF, then it's like, well, why are folks still going into MicroStrategy? And again, it's a lever that in terms of being able to have different instruments to be able to sort of build more and more Bitcoin per share, asset per share. That's kind of what we're looking at. in terms of evaluating these types of structures. And they've been able to do a really good job of raising capital to buy more Bitcoin and provide, again, a different type of asset, but one that's still comfortable for institutions to kind of get access to a single asset. And so MicroStrategy continues to do what they do. And, we believe that there is an opportunity for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, Solana, and especially ones that are sort of like larger cap and ones that are familiar to folks, especially if you build sort of the right structure and the right team around it. So Pantera has been the earliest in terms of seeding some of these, we call them digital asset treasury type companies. DFDV on the Solana side of things, we seeded the CEBT Cantor 21, and even more recently, the Ethereum one, Sharplink, led by the Consensus guys. But really, it's being able to provide a comfortable structure and being able to get leverage through the accumulation of the asset. And also the accumulation of the asset could mean designing ways around staking and yield that just, provide more assets into these structures so that people can, again, the KPI is, assets over shares. So it's something that we don't see any fund being as early and maybe sort of providing as much capital in. So we're going to really sort of capitalize on this new trend. But again, we think that it's beneficial for the entire ecosystem to provide more access to these assets. And it's also an example of us just trying to think outside of the box, right? Like, Kenzie, me and you talked about this, but like the public markets is for traditional finance is way bigger right now than the market that's looking to come into sort of traditional crypto assets. So, to be able to access it right now in whatever sort of ways, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to find unique ways to get our LPs, exposure.
Yeah, totally. This is actually a really great thing that you just mentioned. There's a inflection point now. It seems like, this, liquidity is getting widened coming from the traditional market all of a sudden. And that, introduces new way of investing, right? And you also mentioned that this new fund, you wanted to have a all-in-one approach, which offers flexibility. How do you envision your these buckets, right? Do you have some initial ideas on how you would deploy this capital? Like, for example, how much would be in tokens? How much would be in equity? How much would be in the digital asset treasury companies? What will be? What's your rough idea? Or maybe this is all. That's the whole reason for this to be flexible based.
Yeah, no, it's a question that a lot of folks ask us, and I'd say we want to give ourselves flexibility, but obviously when you go into structuring something, you have like high level parameters, and so I think for us, we put a bit into the liquid markets right away and sort of minority position, but a high majority of the fund is going to be in non-liquid strategies because a lot of folks, while they can they could get into things that are liquid, even though maybe not as the way that we get into it, but a lot of them are really looking for and feel comfortable around earlier stage investments, right? A lot of these institutions, they have a bucket for private equity and VC. So that is going to be a high majority of what we're doing. So that means like equity, early stage tokens, and we call them special opportunities, things where we, buy some secondaries, things that we go into like token treasury deals, or maybe even these digital asset treasuries, or maybe um, providing liquidity and things like that that are just like a bit off normal than your traditional VC fund. And then, I think at least half the fund is going to be focused on your earlier stage bets. And the earlier stage bets, we don't rule out any categories, and we don't do a lot of hardware. That's probably the only thing. But we are investing all the way from new blockchain infrastructure, and obviously like the on ramps and supporting companies that will facilitate, that are sort of like token agnostic. Your brokerages, exchanges, your data providers, forensic, security, insurance, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of more regulated and more on the venture side. And then, I think what we're going to see in this next wave is really a lot of consumer companies. Kenzie, it's hard to compete against and create new consumer type products when you have to bootstrap by, going against some of these incumbents, right? But if you're able to issue tokenized shares that could be tied to some sort of form of economics, it's a great way to bring consumers and developers on board. So yeah, I mean, we're super excited that I think consumer, outside of what we've seen more in the bear market, kind of like developer infrastructure and things like that, really excited that consumer is going to come back. But the biggest trend right now, which two biggest trends, actually you're one of them. Two biggest trends that I'm seeing right now is around AI and stablecoins. That's really where a lot of the conversations are at.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, for sure. These are definitely the new exciting areas that are also getting a good amount of regulatory attentions. Now, what about the previous, these core infra and also RWA, DeFi, these buckets? What's your view on them for this new fund?
Yeah, we're really excited about DeFi. We're investors early on in Morpho and 1inch and um, you know Uniswap, etc. So we believe that DeFi is the infrastructure that is really going to provide the benefits for
Yep.
institutions to really want to come in. I think initially it's going to be sort of probably DeFi in the back end, things that are crypto enabled. And you don't want some of these larger institutions dealing with the complexities of potentially onboarding directly with some of these protocols, but maybe Morpho powers Coinbase, which institutions interact with until they're comfortable going directly to these protocols, things like that. So we're excited about decentralized finance and how that sort of matures into more use cases where institutions, are kind of getting into, whether it's like, private credit to tokenized bonds, tokenized stocks, all this kind of stuff. And so, it, DeFi tokenization sort of go hand in hand. I mean, as we start thinking about USDC, and so we're early investors in Circle, early investors in Ondo, which is doing tokenized stocks, Figure Markets, which is at their yield-bearing stablecoin, YLDS, plus also mortgages on the blockchain, M0, which is infrastructure, allowing folks to launch their own tokenized USD. But as we start seeing more and more assets get tokenized, then it's gonna feed into DeFi in the back end, so that you can actually exchange all these assets in a 24/7 transparent, low fee way, and thus really provide the liquidity and operational benefits of the blockchain. So, we're really excited. I think going forward, I mean, how we're participating we've already invested into a lot of DeFi projects. We'll continue to sort of look at new protocols that are providing interesting primitives on the back end, on the tokenization piece, while we've invested into some of the early guys helping to tokenize these assets. We'll probably see other types of assets being tokenized. Maybe it's real estate, maybe it's energy, things like that. And then we'll probably start investing more into the application layer, guys that are interfacing directly with users and businesses, because that's kind of where you can get more margin, right? Because if you're at the lowest level on the protocol level, sometimes your fees get compressed. But once you have that direct to consumer, direct to business relationship where you can continue to add more products and increase the average customer value, that's a very lucrative place to be in. So we're about to close a deal right now on the cross-border payment side, where they're helping to do, or they're already doing billions of cross-border payments using stablecoin backend. So yeah, we're gonna do a lot more of that.
Yeah, actually, adding on to what you said about these, a few stablecoin deals that you did before, like how big do you think the stablecoin, um, actual use case can go? And, what are some other, you know, big unicorns that can come out of the stablecoin plays?
Yeah, I mean, I see it in a few different layers. I think there is, and until banks fully get into stablecoins, I think there's an area of really just providing the connectivity between institutions and stables, and that's what Bridge was doing, right? So I think there's that area right there that they got acquired for 1.2 billion. I think there's an area there where you can sort of focus as more and more assets get on chain. We're going to see a lot of on-chain liquidity that is needed for all of these assets, and then using stablecoins sort of in between as the sort of FX currency. So we do think that there's an on-chain component that will generate quite a bit of value in on-chain infrastructure. And then outside of that, I'd say on sort of the more direct to consumer or direct to business, there's going to be companies that will focus on really just being kind of like a new type of bank account that's run on stablecoins, where you can provide yield in a sort of global way, and then more easily be able to provide things like payments in a more seamless way. And on the consumer side, a lot of it is like, well, look, I mean, if I'm traveling to, and I know you guys travel to Dubai and India and all this kind of stuff. As a consumer, I mean, if I'm going and I'm traveling, when I move between one currency to another, gosh, I usually go to like the ATM in the jurisdiction. I pay these fees. I mean, what if I'm able to just like do it all on a bank account with like stables in the back end? So for traveling, I think that's a huge use case, or with remittances. Yeah. And then on the business side of things, a lot of these companies like SpaceX, these global companies, they have to pay their employees in these different jurisdictions. They have to, they do payments, and they have currencies that they just like leave in these local jurisdictions, and they have to sort of repatriate it. And then of course, just the business to business payments of business deals and transactions. And so I believe that there's going to be multi-billion-dollar businesses that are more global, but also multi-billion-dollar businesses that are more local, that focus on each of these different areas.
That's super cool. I know you went in pretty big into the Ton ecosystem. Are there ecosystem that's like that? Because Ton is like, a bunch of good stuff. They have so many users. They also have, a lot of different, use cases. Are there similar to Ton type of opportunities you're seeing right now, or potentially this is also like a more similar type of deals happening for the new fund as well?
Yeah, we in terms of tons specifically, I don't think there's another asset right now that's as compelling from both a scale of consumer user base mixed in with the fact that the entire early adopter base of crypto is all in that ecosystem, being
Yeah.
able to sort of like innovate, try new products, DeFi, all that kind of stuff. So as they ramp up on the developer infrastructure to onboard more folks, I think there's just so much more potential. And it seems like one thing is almost guaranteed is Telegram use base is going to continue to grow, and the fact that they can open up in the US, I think, is just monumental, because that is the most valuable sort of demographic for crypto from sort of a wealth perspective. But in terms of if you're asking about like, are there other large blue chips that we can kind of go in there and really be hands-on and king make? I mean, I think our strategy is to be in a lot of these from the seed round and Series A, and then continue to double, triple down along the way. But there are some that we want to, whether it's a new fund or we just want to even just get more exposure, we'll go in there and say, hey, let's do a lockup, let's create another venture round, and let's figure out more ways to add value. And the way that we add value is things like this, right? Like we try to bring a lot of market awareness, and we bring our platform team really standing out in sort of 5 key areas: marketing, regulations, recruiting, research, tokenomics, and business development. So I think for us, like we're willing to sort of help kingmake in some of these other larger ecosystems. We're constantly evaluating the next batch.
Do you think as crypto OGs, like you and me and a lot of our friends, a lot of us are believers of the cycles, right? 4-year cycle or whatever number of years. Do you think the cycle still is there? And I guess the follow-up question is, how do you, or will you time the market, in terms of investments wise, or are you just going to deploy it year over year at the same pace?
Yeah, I don't, we obviously have investment periods for our funds, and we want to fit within that investment period, but we've changed the deployment pace along the way. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we can optimize return for our investors. So for instance, for Fund 4, I actually thought we would have deployed maybe a little bit quicker, but there's a couple of things that happen, FTX, Terra Luna, that may have extended the bear market. And we wanted to make sure that because we started the last fund at 2021 pretty high, right? So if you don't get a catch the rest of the bear market, and maybe as things start upticking, then you miss out on a little bit. So we wanted to so we set to slow down a little bit, became very creative around new strategies, and then wanted to make sure we deployed well into this newer uptick of the next bull run. So again, like that's what you're betting on for yourself as an LP, is that like, hey, these guys they've seen the cycles, they know what happens in terms of the types of entrepreneurs that come in terms of the valuations that happen throughout these cycles, in terms of where value accrues to liquids versus early stage versus not, and can pick when is the right time to both deploy and also stop deploying.
Very cool, very cool. The investment strategy in crypto has changed a bit over time, right? So what do you feel now as for you as an investor? How bullish are you on investing in crypto, and also compared to for example, AI, investing crypto versus investing AI?
Yeah, I mean, I am super high conviction on crypto right now. I
Yep.
believe that the only thing left for crypto to really start hitting like all-time highs and new milestones that are sort of huge step up from what we've ever seen is really on the regulatory side of things. And so we're going to get clarity fairly soon. Companies are going to operate feeling a lot more comfortably and operating in the US, where I believe that there is the most talent for builders right now. And having, comfort that you can launch a token and figure out where it sort of sits, and being able to offer products like derivatives that have never been offered before, and really having more institutional buy-in and more enterprise buy-in. I think we're just going to see a wave that we've just never seen before to unlock uh, global access to this space, starting in the US, both for retail and institutions. And then on the AI piece, AI and crypto are going to go together. I mean, AI doesn't succeed in a big way, I don't think, without crypto really helping to enable and optimize what we can do on the AI side, starting with sentient. I mean, that's the first place you have to go to. We also invested into Sahara too. Both are kind of tackling in different ways, but the data, the models, the agents, I mean, it could be shortcutted and enhanced using crypto, blockchain, and transparency. And I think you can invest into AI through crypto right now. And if you're focusing on AI, it's really crowded. You know what I mean? You want to go where the puck's going, not where the puck's already been. And where the puck's going is crypto.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Awesome, man. This is it's great. It's good to see that you are, super enthusiastic about the future of crypto. Um, awesome. Yeah. Great having you today.
All right. Thank you so much, Kenzie. And yeah, excited to really see where this goes. Both Pantera and Sentient are going to be part of the solution for folks to really sort of understand the space. So yeah, thank you so much to SCB and also Bloomberg and everybody else who's part of this.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Alrighty.